Something's happening among men, not loud, not violent, but quiet and deliberate. It's not a protest in the streets, it's a protest in the soul. More and more men are walking away from the altar, from the promises, from the very idea of marriage. Not because they hate women, not because they've given up on love, but because they've finally realized the deal they're being offered isn't love anymore. There was a time when marriage meant honor. A man gave his word, a woman gave her trust, and together they built something sacred, a home, a family, a legacy. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and both sides carried weight. Both had skin in the game, but that balance is gone. Now the vows are the same. But the meaning isn't. A man still promises to protect, provide, and stay loyal. But what does he get in return? A contract that punishes him if she changes her mind. A culture that mocks him for sacrificing. A system that takes everything if it fails. He's told to man up, to take the risk, to be romantic. But when he looks around, he doesn't see love being rewarded. He sees good men destroyed for trying. Divorce courts that strip them of their homes. Alimony that chains them to resentment. Children turned into weapons in custody battles. And through it all, society applauds her finding herself while shaming him for breaking down. They call him commitment phobic. But what he really is observant. He's seen what happens to men who believe too blindly. He's watched fathers lose everything for loving the wrong person under the wrong system. He's realized that the promise of forever now comes with fine print. And he's tired of pretending it doesn't. So he walks away. Not out of fear, but out of awareness. He's not rejecting women. He's rejecting a rigged game. He's not avoiding responsibility. He's avoiding destruction. They say he's weak. They say he's bitter. But maybe he's just awake. Because the truth is, men don't stop believing in love. They stop believing in fairness. And once a man sees that the modern version of marriage offers all the risk and none of the reward, his silence becomes his rebellion. He stops chasing validation. He stops begging to be understood. He stops fighting battles designed for him to lose. He simply says, no. No to contracts written against him. No to guilt disguised as romance. No to traditions that no longer protect what they promise. And when enough men do that, the world notices. Not because they shouted, but because they disappeared. This is the silent rebellion. The quiet exodus of men who finally chose peace over illusion. And maybe, just maybe, that silence isn't the end of love. Maybe it's the beginning of something honest. Marriage used to be a partnership. Now it's a gamble, and the house always wins. For generations, men saw marriage as a milestone. It meant legacy, respect, purpose. You worked, you provided, you built something worth protecting. And in return, you received loyalty, peace, and companionship. It wasn't a perfect trade, but it was fair. Not anymore. Today, the risk of marriage doesn't just outweigh the reward, it crushes it. Ask the average man what he stands to gain from getting married, and the silence will tell you everything. Because what's left for him, really? Love? He can find that without a contract. Sex? That's cheaper than ever. Partnership? Most women today call that oppression. But what can he lose? Everything. His savings, his children, his home, his peace of mind, and worst of all, his identity as a man. We built a system where one mistake, one argument, or one change of heart can cost a man half his life. And somehow, we still tell him it's romantic. They tell him real men commit. But commitment isn't the issue, it's the consequence. He's not afraid of love. He's afraid of losing himself inside a system designed to break him if it fails. Modern marriage isn't a union anymore. It's a contract, written by lawyers. enforced by governments, and incentivized by profit. It's not two people building something. It's one person taking all the risk, while the other keeps all the leverage. And everyone knows it. They just don't say it out loud. Because speaking this truth makes you the villain. If a man questions marriage, he's labelled bitter. If he demands fairness, he's called insecure. If he walks away, he's accused of being afraid of love. But what if he's just logical? Men are analytical by nature. They watch patterns, they calculate risk, they study outcomes. And what they see doesn't inspire confidence. They see marriages where love dies, but obligations don't. Where passion fades, but payments remain. Where the court decides who gets the house, the car, and the children, but never who gets to keep their dignity. So men adjust. They evolve. They choose differently. Not out of bitterness, but out of intelligence. They no longer see marriage as a blessing, but as a bet with impossible odds. And the truth that no one wants to admit. When love becomes a legal liability, men stop gambling. Because you can't ask a man to risk his freedom, his finances, and his future for the promise of something that society no longer honours. That's not commitment. That's self-destruction dressed up in tradition. And until the risk matches the reward again, men won't come back to the altar. Not because they've given up on love, but because they've finally learned to love themselves enough to walk away from a game that's no longer fair. Every healthy bond runs on an invisible current. Reciprocity, give and receive, respect and return. When one side stops flowing, the current dies, no matter how beautiful the vows were. For centuries, men and women understood this instinctively. A man's strength protected the family. A woman's devotion protected the bond. Different roles, equal value. That balance kept the world spinning. But somewhere along the road to equality, reciprocity got lost. Not because women became evil or men became weak, but because culture began teaching that one side's giving was oppression and the other side's taking was empowerment. And now both feel cheated. Men kept doing what they were wired to do: provide, protect, pursue. But the rewards changed. Loyalty became optional. Appreciation turned into entitlement. And affection, the soft currency that once fueled devotion, became conditional, transactional, or withheld entirely. You can see it in modern relationships. He plans, pays, and proves. She scrolls, compares, and complains. Both exhausted, neither fulfilled. Because gratitude has been replaced by expectations no one can meet. When reciprocity collapses, resentment rushes in to fill the space. Men stop giving when they feel unseen. Women stop trusting when they feel unled. The polarity that once created attraction now breeds irritation. Every act of love becomes a test. Every disagreement a threat. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when a man's effort inspired devotion, not suspicion. When a woman's care was a gift, not a weakness. But modern ideology told her that needing anyone made her small, and told him that being needed made him dangerous. So she armoured up. He shut down. And what used to be complementarity became competition. The tragedy is that both sides are starving for the same thing: to be valued. He wants respect. She wants to feel cherished. But respect without appreciation dies, and affection without admiration fades. The exchange must flow both ways, or it stops flowing at all. That's why so many men have withdrawn. They didn't lose interest in women. They lost interest in one-sided effort. You can't pour into a cup that never refills you. And you can't keep proving yourself to someone who's been taught that your very presence is a privilege she deserves by default. Reciprocity is not romance, it's survival. Without it, relationships become emotional economies that always end in bankruptcy. If love is to mean anything again, both sides must relearn the art of giving back. Not 50-50, but 100-100. Full presence, full gratitude, full respect. Because when men feel appreciated, they rise. When women feel safe, they soften. And when both start giving instead of measuring, the current returns, and love begins to breathe again. Every man remembers the first time he believed in love, the innocence of it, the purity, the feeling that someone finally saw him, not for what he could provide, but for who he was. But somewhere between that boyhood hope and adulthood reality, something cracked. Love stopped feeling sacred. It started feeling staged. Modern love isn't about connection anymore. It's about performance. How it looks, not how it feels. A game of optics played on screens instead of in hearts. We used to build love in private. Now we advertise it for validation. Smiles for the camera, captions about forever, while behind closed doors, distance, resentment, boredom. And men, they see it. They might not say it, but they feel it. They feel the shift from genuine affection to conditional approval. They sense when warmth turns into strategy, when intimacy becomes leverage. For a long time, they tried to play along. They bought the gifts, wrote the texts, learned the scripts. They kept giving, hoping effort could resurrect sincerity. But it never did. Because modern relationships don't ask for devotion, they demand performance. Be romantic, but not too attached. Be masculine, but not too assertive. Be successful, but never make her feel small. It's an impossible equation, and the prize for solving it isn't love. It's exhaustion. That's the quiet disillusionment spreading through men today. They still crave closeness, but they no longer trust it. They've seen how easily "I love you" turns into "I deserve better." How quickly promises vanish once feelings fade. They've realized that modern love isn't built to last. It's built to entertain. Fast beginnings, faster endings. Everyone replaceable, everything disposable. And when love becomes that cheap, commitment starts to look like self-harm. So they adapt. They pull back. They pour that same energy into themselves, their work, their goals, their peace. Not because they're cold, but because they've learned that peace costs less than love. It's not cynicism, it's self-preservation. The modern man isn't heartless. He's heart-tired. Tired of giving his all to people who treat consistency like boredom and devotion like weakness. Tired of being someone's stability while she searches for excitement. Tired of being the anchor blamed for keeping her from drifting. Love used to be a refuge. Now it's a risk. And every broken promise becomes another reason to retreat into solitude. But deep down, beneath the armor, men still want what they always did. Something real. Not the highlight reel. Not the validation loop. Just a quiet, honest bond that doesn't need proof. Because the truth is, men didn't stop believing in love. They stopped believing in what we turned it into. And until love becomes truth again, they'll keep their distance. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Once upon a time, marriage was sacred. Two souls, one promise, sealed not by paper, but by purpose. It was the foundation of families, the cornerstone of civilization. But somewhere along the way, something pure turned into something profitable. Now marriage isn't just a union. It's an industry. And industries don't care about love. They care about leverage. Think about it. Weddings are marketed like luxury products. Half a year's salary for a single day of illusion. The dress, the ring, the venue. Symbols that once represented commitment now represent consumption. They call it the most important day of your life. Translation: the most expensive performance of your identity. But it doesn't end there. The real business begins after the honeymoon. When the same system that sold you romance starts selling you escape. Divorce lawyers, custody battles, alimony courts, industries built not on love, but on the ashes of it. And who profits when marriages fail? Everyone but the man who tried to make it work. Because when love breaks, the system doesn't lose. it earns. Every fight becomes a filing fee. Every heartbreak, a transaction. Every family split, a revenue stream. Marriage used to be a spiritual bond. Now it's a legal contract that the man signs with his freedom. He's told it's equality until it's time to divide everything he built. He's told it's love until love turns into leverage. He's told it's protection until the system protects her at his expense. And society claps, because destruction disguised as empowerment is the economy's favourite fuel. See, love doesn't generate revenue, stability doesn't sell, but chaos does, and every broken home keeps the machine running. The truth is, marriage is no longer about unity, it's about liability. The emotional risk became financial risk, and financial risk became legal slavery. One argument, one accusation, one change of heart, and decades of work can vanish overnight. Men know this. They've seen the statistics. They've watched their fathers, brothers, friends lose half of everything, including the will to try again. And what does society tell them? Man up. Try again. Not all women are like that. But that's like telling a soldier to go back to war because not all bullets kill. This isn't bitterness. It's reality. The modern man isn't afraid of love. He's afraid of what love becomes once the state gets involved. Because when you turn devotion into paperwork and heartbreak into profit, you turn marriage into a marketplace. And men into commodities. Until that changes, until love becomes sacred again instead of transactional, men won't stop walking away. Not because they don't want connection, but because they refuse to keep financing their own destruction. Out of the ruins of broken vows, something new is emerging. Not louder men, not colder men, but clearer men. The kind who have stared at the wreckage of modern relationships and decided to stop bleeding for systems that never cared if they lived or died. He's the man who finally asked, "What if my peace is worth more than proving my worth?" For generations, men were taught to measure their value by what they could give away. Their time, their money, their energy, their youth. They built, they protected, they provided, and in return, they were promised love, respect, belonging. When that promise broke, something inside them did too. But pain has a strange way of purifying. It burns off illusion. It forces clarity. Now, a new kind of man is forming in that fire. He no longer chases validation. He builds stability. He no longer begs to be understood. He learns to understand himself. He no longer trades his peace for temporary affection. He protects it like a sacred asset. They call him detached, unemotional, commitment-phobic. But that's not detachment. It's discernment. He's not cold. He's cautious. He's not bitter. He's awake. He's learned that self-respect is the foundation of every real connection. That a man who can stand alone isn't dangerous. He's free. You'll see him everywhere now. At the gym before sunrise. At the desk building. Something quietly that no one claps for yet. Reading. Thinking. Staying silent in a world that rewards noise. He's not hiding. He's healing. And while society mocks him for walking away, deep down it fears him. Because you can't manipulate a man who no longer needs approval. The self-preserved man doesn't hate women. He just refuses to worship them. He honors the feminine when it's genuine, but no longer sacrifices himself to earn it. He's rediscovering what older generations called virtue. Discipline, composure, purpose. He understands that peace isn't found in another person, it's built within boundaries. And only when two whole people meet do you get real love. Not dependence, not drama, not performance. That's why his solitude isn't loneliness. It's recalibration. He's learning to enjoy his own company, to rebuild trust in himself, to become the man he needed before the world told him who to be. This is the quiet revolution. Men returning to themselves. No protests, no slogans, just self-mastery. Because when a man reclaims his mind and his time, he reclaims his life. And maybe that's what this era of retreat really is. Not the death of devotion, but the rebirth of discernment. The rise of men who would rather walk alone in truth than kneel together in illusion.